in this box is the Antec C6 Curve Air, and it's my new favorite PC case.
Allow me to explain. Not only does this chassis have plenty of hardware support, as you'll see later in this video, but it also has great cooling potential and a sweet panoramic glass design. So it wraps around the left side to the front, and there's a curve in between, and also a bit of the right side panel as well. So when looking at this case from directly in front, it almost feels like this entire chassis is made of glass. It has this really cool stage effect, and we're gonna take full advantage of that in this one. That's right, my 3D printer is whirring away yet again for another themed PC build. We partnered with Antec this time. Of course, we're gonna be building in the C6 Curve Air, and the theme chosen by all of you and the most liked comment in our last themed PC build video is the Dark Knight. So check this, I'm picturing like the Dark Knight himself standing on top of maybe one of these fans. Maybe we 3D print a platform for him to stand on, and then he'll have sort of like this stage presence, right? Because the glass wraps around him, and then possibly like a bat logo or something, maybe like the light, like someone's calling him for help, shining from above. Maybe we have the two fans, like this one in front and then this one up top in front if we do like an AIO, the brightest, so it kind of like makes him light up and stand out from the rest of the build. I'm thinking we also use some clear PLA to like print some stuff for the glass. I think that would be super cool. Maybe like a Why So Serious logo or something over there. And then, I don't know, maybe like those like things that he throws, like those bat-shaped knives or whatever. We have those kind of like sticking through the glass, sticking out of the case like he was throwing them at something. I think that would be pretty cool. You can probably tell I've been running this idea for a bit, and I've already 3D printed the Dark Knight himself just to give you an idea of what we're after here. So this is in black PLA. There were a couple issues with it further down. His cape was especially difficult to print with the minimal supports that I wanted to include here, and I didn't use the highest resolution that my P2S could. So you will be able to see lines. It's possible we can smooth these out, but I don't want to do too much to it for risk of having to reprint this. This took like 24 hours, so I really don't want to mess it up. Maybe we do a bit of like acrylic painting to give him some depth, but this guy right here, I want sitting front and center in this case. So just a small glimpse of what's to come with this build. I am super excited. I hope you are as well. Be sure to stay with me.
Are you sitting on a gaming PC without an activated copy of Windows? Forget $100+ retail keys. Instead, snag an OEM Windows 11 key for a fraction of the price to unlock the full potential of the OS. Oh, and don't worry, they'll still remove those pesky activation watermarks. Just click the links below to get started today, and be sure to use our special offer code SKGS for a sweet discount on a variety of options, including Windows 11 Pro, Home, and more.
Now before we throw a bunch of hardware in here, I want to go over a few things that I really like about the C6 Curve Air. Firstly, the fact that air is in its name, suggesting that airflow is optimized, and it is in fact very well optimized. So you get two discrete 120mm fans included with this variant, and discrete airflow through the basement. There's this mesh cover near the front of the chassis, and this is going to allow air to actually be pulled in not only from the side here, but also up front. You can see more mesh there. And from the right side, more mesh here. Actually extends the entire length of the right side. So that I think is super cool. I'm not gonna be worried at all about airflow in this chassis. The other thing that you're probably wondering about is CPU cooling. So we don't really have a spot to mount an AIO at the bottom unless, I mean, I suppose you could put like a 240 here, but that would be sort of strange. The only spot where it's viable in the C6 Curve Air is up top. Up to a 360mm is supported, which I think is plenty for most builds. You also get a 120 or 140mm mount at the rear, which is currently populated by a 140 included with the case. You've also likely noticed this chassis supports back connect motherboards, which is a growing trend here in the 2020s, so it's nice that Antec decided to throw it in here. It's one of those things where if you don't use it, it's not really a huge deal. Like these holes are gonna be covered by an ATX motherboard anyway, but if you have one of those motherboards with its connectors flipped around the backside, then you can build some super clean, aesthetically pleasing PCs with very minimal cable exposure. Rubber grommets throughout is a nice inclusion, definitely adds to the premium sort of feel this chassis has on top of the curved tempered glass and that stage effect we already talked about. The other thing you'll notice when building in this one is the fact that the power supply orientation is actually shifted 90 degrees. It would be counterclockwise, right? So what they've tried to do here, I believe, is keep cable like spillover away from these front fans. You want this unimpeded because again, this is discrete graphics card airflow, and some of this will actually kind of work its way through the radiator for your CPU if you're running an AIO as well. So you don't want cables here, you don't want them getting snagged or anything, and that's why Antec has sort of like forced you into this rotated power supply positioning so that most of your cables still stem around the back of the motherboard tray. But the other cool thing here is that Antec added a traditional power connector location. So they have a pass-through power cable cable included with the chassis, and you would be able to plug this into your unit the exact same way you would in a regular mid-tower. So with everything fitted together, you won't even likely know that your unit is actually turned sideways, and that's again another way for them to clear way for these fans up front. So I think it's really cool. So they definitely thought this through. It wasn't just slapped in. I think this is very well optimized, and I'm excited to experience this firsthand. Without further ado, let's jump into some of the other components we're going to feature in this build. We went the Intel route for the last PC build video, so how about we go AMD this time? A Ryzen 7 9800X 3D, a sweet gaming CPU. Oh, hey Cash.
The board will pair it with an X870E Tai Chi from ASRock.
And since I don't want extra RGB in this build for reasons you'll see later, we're gonna go with some vanilla Kingston Fury DDR5. In addition to their case, Antec also sent a Skeleton 360 ARGB cooler. This is gonna be plenty for our 9800X 3D, and thanks to the airflow orientation of this chassis, again, I don't think we're gonna have really any problems there. The only struggle we might have is in the RGB setup, because I wanna make sure that what we illuminate in this build really has a purpose, and I want a lot of that to focus on, again, the Dark Knight character himself, Mr. Batman, as well as possibly some of the other smaller bits that we throw into and around the chassis. So maybe we can 3D print something for the CPU block itself, and then we'll load up some RGB software and try to get these fans just right.
Storage is super important to me in this one, especially for like the Batman Arkham series. I think that'd be super cool to throw that entire library onto this machine. And so I'm opting for a WD Black 8100. This is a 4 terabyte NVMe.
Antec sent over a GSK Gold 850 watt fully modular power supply for this one, which should be plenty of power headroom. And I also have a sleeved gold cable extension set from nsource.net.
And that color scheme's important to me because this Tai Chi motherboard also has some gold accents, but everything else is pretty much blacked out. Same with the Batman character. If you think about it, his suit is almost entirely black, but he does have a few goldish or yellow accents, depending on if you're referring to like the comic book character or modern interpretations of him. I think that a little bit of gold here or there to break things up will look super cool.
If I'm being honest, I haven't actually decided on a graphics card yet. That's a pretty big piece of this puzzle, but I'm not building this for any particular budget. I'm not intending this to be like a value build or like a high performer. It is what it is. It's supposed to be more of a thematic build. We're supposed to show off the Antec case, of course, and that's what I'm gonna aim for. So don't take this build as gospel. If you wanna build along, I'll have these parts in the description, but yeah, they might not make a ton of sense in the end, and that's okay. As long as this looks like a proper Dark Knight themed PC, I'll say mission accomplished.
So with our 3D printer still whirring away, we can go ahead and tackle the basics for our platform, that being, of course, our 9800X 3D. This thing is going to be one heck of a gaming chip. We're gonna drop this carefully into our sparkling brand new socket, lower that retention arm back down, and voila, it's that simple, folks. And then DDR5, which is also pretty simple, although if you're a first-time builder, you might be surprised by how much force is required to fully seat these into their respective slots. We're gonna start with slot A2 first. There we go, and slot B2. Again, a fully blacked out look on this side of the equation is really what I'm after, which is why these don't have RGB. Let's see how easy it is to install our M.2. I'm gonna put it in the typical spot, although we do have one next to our DDR5 as well, which is kind of strange. Should be totally toolless. Connect it like so. We'll lock it down with this little arm here, and then I believe it just snaps back in place. Yeah. That's simple.
And we have nothing really to take care of on the motherboard side for the AIO, since we get to retain the stock AM5 mounting brackets with this setup. That means we can drop our platform in straight in as is, but before that, I want to remove this 140 mil fan at the rear to make way for our AIO tubes. Remember, we're not gonna have as much space up front because our Dark Knight is going to be up there. So out it comes, not a big deal in the grand scheme of things.
And now in goes said platform, and boy, oh boy, is this gonna look super clean. I mean, that is the goal at least.
Just a few Phillips screws to take care of.
And now I can tackle some basic wiring, or at least, well, I would be able to if this was like a conventional right side panel. I think to get all of this off, you have to start first with the top panel. And this is all totally toolless, by the way, which is nice. Then we can take care of this right tempered glass panel, just a small one. And then this lower basement cover should just pull up. All right, yeah, that was super easy. And we actually have unfettered access to our power supply mounting area as well. Remember, this stuff closer toward the front of the chassis should be left open and airy for the sake of those two basement fans. But otherwise, further back, plenty of room.
As always, I spent a fair deal of time on cable management, despite us not getting to see much of this when it's all said and done. I wanted to make sure as many cables were hidden from routing holes and grommets for as clean a look as possible from the left side. Front I/O was wired, including type C and A, and some fan swaps were also performed. The two lowers included with the Curve Air are actually reverse blade units, which is super nice. However, they don't light up, so I swapped in a couple of skeleton AIO units instead. These aren't reversed, but their frames will be covered up anyway with our 3D printed grills. Speaking of, these came out super nice. Printing in multiple pieces and gluing together proved the best bet for stable and clean finishes, and gave me a chance in one case to incorporate an LED strip and accompanying wiring. This bracket would house our bat symbol, so I wanted to make sure it had plenty of lighting, more than just a single fan would offer. The end result is, it's a bit rough, but it should get the job done when the lights are off and the rig is on. Since I pulled fans from the AIO for the case itself, I threw in some gold accented ID cooling fans for the radiator. These accents should blend nicely with those on our motherboard while still keeping a low color profile overall. Then it was time to fit the AIO block to our motherboard and CPU, finish up basic wiring. I find this is much easier to do with the PSU out of the case, since it allows me to take full advantage of zip tie points and small crevices without all the extra cabling. This GSK unit from Antec is fully modular, so we'll only need to connect our 24-pin, 8-pin EPS, and supplemental 8 pins for our graphics card. It slid into the case in its updated orientation, and was tucked away with a toolless, removable side cover. With cable extensions wrapped up, fully rounding out the black and gold color scheme, I turned to more of my 3D prints, including this Joker quote from the Dark Knight movie that I hand wrote in Tinkercad. I thought it was a nice touch. Now, I did write this with a computer mouse, so it does look a bit chaotic and jumbled in a way, but I think it conveys a powerful message. A few finishing touches to go, and we'll have one heck of a Batman-themed PC.
I don't know about you, but I'm very much liking the way this one's coming together. Actually, I'm more happy with this, I think, in the long run than I am with the Tron build, and that's just because I'm becoming more comfortable with my 3D printer. Some of the stuff that we are designing ourselves, and there is a bit of that here, is just flowing much better now that I know how to use rafts and things to prevent warpage, and I'm getting better with fine-tuning the smaller details on that front. Now, for the graphics card, I've chosen an RTX 4070. This one from Asus actually has a clear shroud, and I think that's going to look nice with a lot of our clear PLA that we've been using. Of course, it's not going to be the exact same finish. This will be a little more transparent, but I don't think it's going to stand out too much, which is actually the goal for this build. I don't want any of the hardware necessarily detracting from the other aspects of this build, like the things we've printed, of course, the Batman figure himself, and even the text at the back that we added, the quote from the Joker. I think that's a super important part of this build, and so I don't want a flashy, super colorful graphics card or anything pulling people's eyes away from that text. And so, again, this is more like form over function. That's totally fine. It's what we're after, and I think this card will still work quite nicely with a 9800X 3D.
This 3D printed glass cracking design was such a cool touch in my opinion. I actually found it in Bamboo Studio's online model section, though it was intended by the original creator for cell phones and that sort of thing, to prank others into thinking their screens had been cracked. For tempered glass like this, however, I think it actually works even better, especially when paired with clear PLA filament. And then combining that with one of our bat throwing knives really sealed the deal. From a few feet away, it looks so cool. I used another one to prop up our graphics card a bit, because why not? And stickied the other piece of it in the vicinity to make it look like it broke on impact, yet still lodged into the metal. To round out the design elements, I turned to acrylic paint for our Dark Knight character. I debated long and hard between keeping him fully blacked out, almost like he was sort of like a silhouette of himself, and giving him some color, particularly around his chin and jaw, which is about the only exposed part of Batman in the modern movies. His belt is often a bit muted, or maybe a gold or a yellow, so I dabbed a bit of that as well, and went over all of my mistakes with Phantom Black again to clean up the lines. All in all, considering I cannot paint at all, I'd say it turned out all right.
Yeah, I definitely could use some painting tips, but I do think it looks better than just a fully blacked out Batman or Dark Knight. I think, you could make the case that having him fully blacked out is actually pretty cool. It's almost like he's in the dark, like he's casting a shadow, but we're gonna have him illuminated in the case, and so I think that some color was warranted. I know I went a little overboard with the gold belt and stuff, but I think the skin tone is nice, and then added just a light bit of gray to the back of his cape to give it a little bit of depth. Other than that, though, I'm gonna leave it as is. I think he looks pretty cool, all things considered. And we're about ready to wrap up this entire build. It actually went by rather fast. I know for you guys, it's going to seem like this all happened in like 20 minutes, but it's been maybe 2 or 3 days of printing, and I've tried to be more proactive this time around, just so that I'm not waiting and like printing things last minute. So let's get a couple more pieces in the build and turn it on for the first time. I printed one more of these fan grills just because I thought it was strange looking when only one of these on the bottom was covered. And so just for uniformity's sake, I've got another one here. It's a 2-piece, and I found that with 3D printing, oftentimes it's better to just split your prints up into multiple pieces versus using like rafts and trees and things that just become a little more annoying to deal with when it's all said and done. So in order to get this in there, I mean, we can set it in, but it's not going to be screwed down correctly. So we're going to have to take this graphics card back out, which involves removing our little Batman throwing knife prop. It actually worked out quite well that this supports the card the way that it does. And I was sure to design these frames thin enough so that we could still use like conventional fan screws. That was super important to me. I don't want to have to use any fancy mounting hardware. You can just stick with stuff that already comes in the box. You can see there, we just tighten it down like so. And yeah, it's definitely sturdy. It ain't going anywhere.
I think this looks a lot better now. It's a little more uniform, a little more blacked out, which I think fits that Dark Knight theme.
I was playing around with this third, with throwing knife, whatever Batman calls. I don't remember what he calls these. But I have a fully printed one that could honestly be cleaned up a tad bit more than it is. But I was unsure of what to do with it, if I even want to use it in the rig. I'm afraid that at a certain point, this becomes too busy. Like, I'd like to use like the unused 8-pin supplemental cable as sort of like a little brace for one of these, so it almost looks like it was thrown and kind of got stuck in there. I think that looks cool, but like, is it too busy? Because I want to be able to see one of these like almost in its fullness, in its totality, so it's not like broken up or split or anything. But I just can't find a really good spot for it. So I think I'm probably just gonna leave it out, and instead we'll just have more of that attention shifted to our Dark Knight. Now, the cool thing about this location for him is he's almost perfectly underneath that bat symbol. So like the one that they shine up in the sky, right, when they need help, it's almost like fitting that he's right there underneath, like he's answering the call. He's also, again, gonna be illuminated from below. So he'll have light coming from above and below. And that's pretty much going to be the extent of the serious lighting in this case, apart from what's off to the left. I did briefly mention this earlier, but I think this quote is so cool to have back here. I know it looks a bit messy. I know it sort of looks like graffiti, but that's kind of the point. I want it to look a little chaotic because that's the Joker character, right? A little bit of chaos, a little bit of crazy, a little bit of, honestly, some pretty good quotes. And this is one of them, one of his best, I think. Madness, as you know, is like gravity. All it takes is a little push. And I wanted to push sideways here because I feel like squeezing words left to right would be really tough here. So I just did a big push from top to bottom. And I think it works. Like it just, I think, gives credence to a little of the chaos that I was after here. Of course, we have the Joker. This is Heath Ledger's Joker. Behind the Dark Knight, of course, has to be Heath Ledger's Joker. This is the Dark Knight trilogy we're after here. I think this is what most of the comments were expecting when the commenter said Dark Knight theme. And I've got Why So Serious down here, of course. It's like one of his most iconic phrases. And then, you know, you get like some more basic stuff here. So the Bat logo, which I need to actually reset because it's kind of leaning. It needs to be torqued a little clockwise. And then this up here, which I thought was really cool. I saw this actually, someone else designed this in the Bamboo Studio. And so it's the bat symbol, but then like the city, I think it's Gotham City, kind of like etched into the bottom of it. And I thought that would be fitting for the top of the case. So it almost looks like it's kind of, I don't know, like icicles or something, like it's raining down from above. I thought that looked dope. And then of course the glass broken up front as well. I think that is one of the coolest additions here. It really does, in my opinion, look like, especially for the effort and time spent on this, one of these knives was actually piercing through the glass. So don't worry, Antec, the glass is not broken. It's not actually shattered, but it does have a really cool effect there. I'm happy with that. The last thing, of course, is that bat symbol, which is baked in there, and you'll really see, I guess, the results of that when the system is fired up. And speaking of, it's about that time. Oh, check that out. I haven't even fully powered it on yet, just connected to the wall, and the motherboard's already lighting up. I don't even think I'm going to use the lighting in this board very much, but I've got to say, it does have a cool ambiance to it. All right, let's give it a power on. All right. Now the rig is pretty loud as it stands, and that's because we haven't tweaked anything yet, so they're all just, it sounds like on full blast. We'll fix that. I also, again, want to fix the color scheme. I think I'm going to deactivate a lot of the motherboard's coloring and just stick with illumination of the fan so that our Batman is the central figure, right? He's the thing that people are going to want to draw their eyes to because of the way the lighting is. That's at least how I had this playing out in my head. I'm just not sure if our light up top is going to be bright enough. And now, because we had such great success with Signal RGB in our last themed PC build video, I'm sticking with it again. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. All right, I think that is a lot better. Much quieter now, and you can see the Bat logo there, now illuminated in white. I mean, it's not giving the full effect I was hoping for, at least with lights on here in the office. We can try with the lights off in a second, but I just wanted to show you with everything synced up. And I also decided to keep these illuminated because these actually aren't really that bright, especially compared to the LED strip here that I included in order to illuminate the text for the quote. So I think I'm inclined to keep them on. Possibly this one down here is a little bright, but I really like the way that this looks here. So the illumination of Batman with that bat symbol up top, I think looks super cool. Of course, you can see we get plenty of unimpeded airflow below. That's one of those features I wanted to make sure that we highlighted with this version of the C6. It looks so good, and it's also extremely functional. I think it's time then for a bit of a montage.
See, madness, as you know, is like gravity. All it takes is a little push.
What an outcome. I've got to say, this actually turned out a lot better than I was expecting. I think my favorite things about this have got to be probably the Batman throwing knives, the one that pierces the front glass, or appears to at least. I really like that effect, what we did with the clear PLA filament as well. I've got to say, like, clear PLA filament in general is just phenomenal. I've never used it before up until these most recent PC builds, and the fact that it is as transparent as it is, it really does play nicely with a lot of the RGB that modern PC builds have. So if you have a 3D printer and you haven't checked out clear PLA, I do recommend it. The Batman character also turned out pretty well, considering I actually scaled this model up from another one that I found in the Bamboo online library. So somebody actually created this, which is just phenomenal. I mean, the fact that folks can create figures as detailed as this, and then for it to be scalable as well. I think I increased the size by about 20 or 30%, and for it to look as good as it does is pretty dang impressive. And then just, again, touching it up with a bit of acrylic to give it some depth, some character, I think does set it apart from just your typical, like, monochromatic print. I actually really like the motherboard theming, the way we have it lit up now, where it's sort of a neutral white. The cogwheel, sort of like gear logos that Tai Chi boards are known for, actually I think play nicely with the other Batman theming in here. Sort of like an Arkham Knight style vibe, like a rustic sort of city. And so that's why I decided to keep them the way they are. But I do still have to become more acquainted with light diffusing in different areas, again, working around different shapes and things that we design, especially with 3D prints, that can affect the way that light sort of like spreads out in a chassis. When you have a lot going on, and this build definitely does, it is a busy theme. I will admit that it's not the cleanest. That was kind of what I was going after, but when you have all of that in a chassis, light definitely doesn't work the way that you expect it to, and that's something that I expect I will improve on with time. Now, in the case of the C6 Corvair, one thing I really love, and I've said this before, the fact that you have such a cool stage presence with whatever you place near the front of the chassis. This wraparound tempered glass effect, I'll be honest, I wasn't totally on board when I first started seeing these designs make their way into the PC industry, but seeing an iteration like this, where very little is compromised in the way of hardware support. I mean, the only thing you're really losing here is just front mounting. But if you have bottom mounting, you have top mounting, and 140 mounting at at the rear, unless you're doing some crazy hardcore overclocking, a case like this should suit every need you have. And that's another great quality of the C6 Curve Air. It is aesthetically pleasing. It's not gonna break the bank. Most Antec cases are actually surprisingly affordable for what they offer, and it's pretty dang functional too. As I said, it's gonna be linked in the description. Be sure to show them some love. That helps us out, helps them out. We appreciate that support. You can also find all the other gear we use to build the system down there. I don't unfortunately have a lot of the 3D models linked. Some of them are like Bamboo Lab dependent, so it just depends on where creators, designers upload their STL files. But if you just wanna search for like Dark Knight or Batman themed stuff, you'll probably see some of the things we've used here. So shout out to those creators. I wanna make it a goal of mine when I get good enough in SolidWorks and Tinkercad to design some of these more complex models that I wanna make these for free for others to use as well. I think it's really cool that they do that for us. It allows us to build super cool systems like these with our P2S and maybe even other printers in the future. Again, thank you so much for watching, for clicking on this video, for that continued support, and thanks for learning with me.